Welcome to the HBS Medicaid School Program Documentation System. This is a full training video, and I will be going over all of the features in the software program. Let's start out with the first menu option, Add New Student. If a student is not set up in the system, it will need to be set up by the first therapist that sees that student. In this case here, we're going to use the last name of Brown. Hit Tab. We'll use the name Brian. Hit Tab. The yellow features are the required fields. The white fields are optional. When keying in a date in our system, all we need is the 2-digit month, 2-digit day, and 2-digit year. And 11/30/11 turns into November 30th, 2011. The district of residence is going to default to the district that you are currently in. If the student resides in a different district, at this point you would choose Delete and key in the first few letters of the district. Choose the magnifying glass and it will show you any district that starts with those letters. In this case here, we're going to choose Lancaster City Schools. And the final option is the ICD-9 code. If you click the magnifying glass with nothing in the yellow box, it's going to bring up 70 common codes to that type of service. We're filtering by service type. If you would like to see all codes, select all. Now we're accessing 14,000 codes. But if you want to look for a specific code, key in a word that is maybe in that code. Hit Filter. Once again, you want to be searching all codes. Hit Filter. It'll bring up all the codes that have the word problem in it in this case. I'm going to choose V40.0, Problems with Learning. Very common code we see used for assessment process. We don't need a middle name. We don't need a name suffix. District ID is optional. Social Security number is optional. Even a second ICD-9 is optional, but let me show you that again. I'm going to click the magnifying glass. Once again, it brings up 70 common PT codes. If we wanted to see all codes, we would choose all. Key in a specific word that you want to search. Hit Filter. It brings up the codes that match that word. In this case here, we'll choose that. And now there's 2 ICD-9 set up for the student. Only requires 1, but that's how you would set up the second one. In this case here, I'm going to add Brian to my caseload. Instead of searching through a bunch of Browns, when I choose that student by adding them to my caseload, I'm only searching the students on my caseload. If Brian was not on an IEP or not part of an ETR, you can actually still document for his services. We would like you to tell us that he's not part of an IEP or an ETR so we know not to bill those services that you may document for Brian. Here we have an optional IEP minute tracking. Optional, you do not have to use this feature. MSP is not tracking your IEP minutes. Your district's not tracking your minutes. This is strictly for your use. So in this case here, I'm going to say effective September 2012, Brian receives 90 minutes per month. And I will save that student. And it actually takes you into Brian Brown and shows our 90 minutes that we have in the IEP. None have been documented. Any of your services that would be documented would be listed here. We have not documented for Brian yet. Now at this point, I want to go back to the main menu, and I want to show you the Modify Existing Student. We go into Modify. If we were searching for Brown, we have Brown on our caseload. We would search. There's Brian. Choose that, and then we could modify something and then resave it. That would be how you would modify an existing student. Once again, takes you into that student. I like to go back to the main menu so we can start where potentially you would be starting. Okay, now we're back to the main menu. We did add new student. We did modify student. The next thing is probably the most common feature you'll use in the program, add new service documentation. We've highlighted in a little bit darker blue, knowing that that's what you're going to be using a lot of the time. So if we choose that, first thing it's going to ask you, what is the student's last name? Once again, I'll just key in a few letters of that student's last name. I know Brian's on my caseload, so I could use my caseload and I would find one. If I choose not my caseload, I'm going to find a lot more Browns. So adding them to your caseload is a way to not have to go through potentially several pages of Browns to find Brian, but it would only show up the ones on your caseload. So I choose Brian. Once again, a familiar screen. We're in Brian. We could, at this point, enter new service documentation. What it's going to do is take you to the form that I'm sure everyone's used to completing. It's going to default to school. We could choose home, office, or other. Most of the time, you'll just tab through there. We already have our IC9 defaulting that we have set up with Brian. We have the second one that defaults. We get to date of service. Once again, when you're keying in the date, we could use a 2-digit month, 2-digit day, and a 2-digit year. Or we could use the calendar. Choose the calendar and choose what day you want. Or we've even made it even shorter. If you're current, put a T, hit tab, and it puts in today's date. And let's say the service was yesterday, put a Y, and we use yesterday's date. I like using the calendar to the side. I just click the calendar, and it was today. And then we go to the time, the start time. I don't need a colon. I don't need an AM or PM. 9:00. Tab would be 9 a.m. 10 o'clock would be 1000. Hit tab. My procedure code. We've arranged the procedure codes to try to make it easy to find the ones that you commonly use. The very first two are the common one-on-one codes that you would use. The next one is your group of 2 or more. After that, these codes are your evaluation codes. Here are other codes that are in the program rules, but a lot of them are rarely used, but we have those for you. And then these are what we call 999 codes. This is if you would like to document for some activities that are not necessarily Medicaid billable, but you'd like to have these on your case notes. These are what we call 999 codes. In this case, I'm going to say that it's a group of 2 or more students. And I could go right to my treatment note and type in my treatment note, or we have an optional bank of services. This is something that you would create. And I could go and choose my bank and say I was doing this and I was doing that. I choose select, and it puts that in my case note for me. I could actually go back into that note and key in some more notes to that if I would like. If I'm building my bank and type some services in there, I could save it to my treatment bank so it's available the next time I provide that service. Optional progress notes. A lot of times we see numbers, we see percentages, and we see text in here. It's optional. The program does require that you document progress. But if therapists are documenting their progress in other areas, they wouldn't necessarily have to document it here. This allows this progress actually to come off on a separate report, which I'll show you a little bit later how you can print a progress report from our system. Group size, I'm going to choose a group size of 2 and hit tab. The system will ask, tell the other student in the group, and it will then create a claim for that student also, or if it's more than one student, it would create a claim for all those in the group. Defaults to the IC9 that's set up for that student. Under the treatment note, you could type in more treatment notes, or you could even say, use the same as I have up here. And once again, other additional progress, which you probably would want to type something unique to this student. I initial the claim, save it, And now the claim has been created for both students. Here is my claim for Brian Brown. There's the 60 minutes that we've documented. And any other claims that are documented would show up each time you go into that student. The status is blank. As long as the status is blank, you could go in and modify or even delete that claim. We will pull this claim about a month after the service date, and the status will be changed to processed. At that time, you'll only be able to view and print that claim. I'm going to go ahead and go back to main menu. This is another way to get back to main menu up here. You can get back to the main menu from this menu, but you can also choose main menu here, switch district, same. Switch district is here, it's here, exit is here, logout is here. So we added a new student, we modified existing documentation, we added new documentation. To modify documentation, it's going to ask you what that student that you want to modify. I'm going to search my caseload because I know Brian is on my caseload. It takes us back into Brian. We could choose what claim we wanted to modify, and it pulls up the claim. We would modify that claim, put your initials back in, and save it. And that's how you would modify a claim. Once again, let's go back to main menu. And I'm going to skip this feature. Switch districts. If you actually work in more than one district, you can very quickly switch districts by changing the districts, hit switch, and it will then take you into the new district that you chose. This is one of our newest features. It's called a daily therapy schedule. It's actually a great shortcut for those routine services that you provide to students on a routine basis. And here's how it works. For this day, there's nothing scheduled. Everything's open. But if we want to schedule someone for 10:30, we would click that box. It would say, who do you want to schedule? We're going to schedule Mr. Brown. There's our Brian Brown. We're going to say that it defaults the date of the calendar we're in, the time we chose, and let's say it's 11 o'clock. Let's say this is recurring. We're going to see Brian Brown every week between 10:30 and 11 on Mondays for the next 25 weeks. I can even pre-fill my procedure code. I know that every week we're going to provide that service with another student, and possibly you could even know what you're actually going to be doing, or at least get a note in there and then add to that note after the service takes place. So I select that. So I'm saying Brian Brown, 10:30 to 11, starting on 9/10 weekly for 25 weeks. We're going to do it for a group of 2 or more, and we're going to do these activities. I save that. And now there's Brian out on the schedule. And let's go ahead and schedule the other person who's going to be with Brian. We'll choose John Adams, and that was 11 o'clock. And John also is going to be getting this service weekly on Mondays for the next 25 weeks. We can go ahead and pull the procedure code. We can select the service from the bank. Select that. And we'll save that. And now John Adams is also out there. And they're not only out there for the 10th, there they are for the 17th, the 24th, and so on. We'll come back to the 10th. Let's schedule one more person with them. Let's choose the John Adamston. It's going to be 11, recurring, weekly, Mondays, for 25 weeks. Once again, let's go ahead and choose the group size, and let's go ahead and choose the case note. Okay, so I have the 3 scheduled out there. You could schedule your entire day of services, and if for some reason someone doesn't show or you need to add someone to the group, you could add someone to the group here, or you can even, once a claim is generated, add someone to the group. But let's say that John Adams didn't show up. Before we generate this claim, we would go back into that appointment, and we would say that the student was absent. And it's going to tell you that it's going to put an absent claim out there for you. It's going to save an absent claim for the student. If for some reason the student shows up at the last minute, you would have to go in and manually delete that absent student. We'll say OK here and save it. And now John Adams has an absent claim for this time and this day. These 2 students showed up. The service was provided. We go to generate claim. And it's able to backfill all this information, including the date, the time, the procedure code. And once again, here's what we selected as what we were going to do. We could go in there and key in some more information if we wanted. We could do some progress if we wanted. We could key in more data under that student and also progress for that student. And we initial that, and now the claim is generated for both students. It shows claim generated. The 2 claims were generated for these 2 students, and an absent claim was generated for that student. And once again, those appointments will be out there for the following week to do the same. So from here, let's return back to main menu. And now I can show you this feature, which is create mass absent documentation. I wanted to show you the scheduler first so you can see how this feature works. This is for a snow day or a day that school's not in session, and you want to reflect that in the students' case notes that were scheduled to be seen that day. In this case here, we'll say it's a calamity day. And the students that were on the schedule are going to be pulled forward. And then you can also add additional students. So now when I do create a claim, it'll create an absent claim, calamity day, for these 3 students. And that's just a shortcut for, imagine if you were scheduled to see a dozen students that day. It's one way to get a dozen claims done very quickly for that absent day. From here, let's return back to main menu. Okay, so we've done these features. We've done these features. We did the daily schedule. Here is where you would maintain that method procedure bank that I showed you earlier when we were entering a claim. And this is strictly a way for you to have a shortcut in some of the case notes that you keep. Repetitive information can be saved, and then you can actually choose what you're doing. So this is actually creating a drop-down menu, and we'll set one up here, and then I'll actually go back to a claim and show you how we access this. So if we go to add, and we can just say here that this is where you would put a sample description. And down here you would then type down what you want it to show up in that case note. You would save this, and it puts it on the bottom, but let's say that you want that at the top. That's what you do the majority of the time, and you don't want to page down through here. You can actually number that and say, I want that to show up first, and it'll actually move everything else down and put that up first. You can actually go and modify it or even delete it. Let's say that you don't use that very often and you want to delete it. You can delete that. The record has been deleted. But this is something that when you first log in, it'll be completely blank. You would actually add your procedures there. And once again, it's the note that you want to automatically be able to be pre-filled when you select it, when you're entering new service documentation. I'm just going to choose any student here just to show you. Enter new service documentation. And Once again, this treatment note here, rather than hand typing everything in here, you could pre-select, predefine specific tasks that you do, choose the ones from your drop-down menu, hit select, and instead of having to type it in there, it puts it in there for you. So it's, in essence, creating your own drop-down menu using the words and the phrases you want to use. At this point, I'm going to return to main menu. And once again, that's maintained in IEP Service Procedure Method Bank. It is optional. If you'd rather just write your notes each week, you can write your notes right into your case note and not use this feature. Change your password. The system's going to require that you change your password every 90 days. It'll warn you in advance, and then on that 90th day, it'll make you change your password before it allows you to move on. Print and view reports. This is where you can actually print various reports. The case note summary we talked about earlier. I'm going to use a pretty wide date here to make sure we get a lot of data. I'm going to go from January 1st, 2010 to 08/31/12. I could select a specific student here, or I could just say I want it for all students. So I leave it blank. It's for all students. And I'm going to want a page break. I want every student on a different page. So this is something that a lot of therapists will put the beginning of the school year, the ending school year date. They'll print this for the entire year, print off paper copies, and put that in the student file. We're going to choose Run here. In this case here is the case note for the first student. We actually have 16 of them. That's the first page, next page, next page. So this is a report that will show student name, service date, what you did, procedure code, time in, time out. And this could be used for various purposes. Definitely when you're reviewing services with a parent, or maybe your annual IEP review, this information becomes nice to have. And you can get this not only for your case notes, but you can also get it printed for your progress notes. You can also do a combined note summary, which would show your case note and your progress note. This is a listing of the students on your caseload, and this is student appointments. You could choose students, and it would show their appointment history. Submit a question to HBS. This is a good way for us to communicate back and forth. If you have a question, a comment, a software enhancement idea, by all means, give us your subject, your return email address, your question or comment. Once you save it, it comes to one of our staff, and they will promptly answer your question or certainly take your suggestion under advisement. Here I'm going to return to main menu. Software user instructions. We have the training videos here, but we also have paper instructions here that give you line-by-line instructions on all the features in our software. So to set up your caseload, it tells you exactly how to do that. MSP reference material. We don't have a whole lot out here now, but we plan on putting a lot of information out here. Frequently asked questions, and also some of the many articles we do on various topics that may be important for therapists to know. We will be putting different things out here, so look for more to show up there. And this is another ICD-9 lookup code without actually going into a student. Once again, how I looked up a code earlier, I could key problem, do search. It's going to tell me all the codes that have that word in them. Just another way of looking up codes. And the final one is keyboard shortcuts. Remember F2 saves no matter where you're at. And remember that Y and T for the date shortcut, but those are a few keyboard shortcuts that are built in the system. Release notes. We do a release every year over the summer. We do another release over the holiday break. Our next release will be version 4.1. But with version 4.0, if you wanted to go in and see what changes did we make, this will list out then the changes, the additions we made to the software. And that is our software product. Always keep in mind that if you have questions, you can call us directly or communicate with us through submit a question to HBS, and keep those suggestions coming. If you have software ideas of how we can make this program meet the needs of the Medicaid school program and also meet your needs, that certainly is our overall goal. Thank you very much.